Welcome to Emotional Sobriety. So good to be back here with you guys. We've got Tom with us, who was conspicuously absent during the Super Bowl last weekend. I'm not gonna, make any assumptions about where Tom was exactly, but we'll just let you guys fill in the blanks on that. How's it going, Tom? How you been?
The Chiefs won. I'm in good shape. Yeah, my well-being was dependent upon that. So I know that's really emotionally sober, um, but I'm okay for now. You're rooting for yeah, of course you were rooting for the 49ers. Yeah.
Me and my sponsee watched it, and we were doing some reading the big book, kind of like during halftime, and I was like, out of the corner of my eye, I was watching Usher gyrate, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a good time. And I set up an exercise bike, which I think I talked to you guys a little bit about last time. Didn't want to waste any time in introducing Howard Malitz.
Yeah, Howard Malitz. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, you were with us last weekend, and Alan thought, and I agreed. It was one of our best episodes because we weren't expecting you to drop in,
Hmm.
and you just really cut to the quick about like this issue of financial insecurity and
Yeah.
and emotional sobriety, and it was just very moving,
Mm.
for me.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's good to see you, Patrick. It's good to see you, Tom.
Yeah.
I do miss seeing Tom in person. We had an open chair session in public. I don't know if you remember
Mm-hmm.
that back at the
Oh yeah. Oh,
fire. And
absolutely. I remember.
I really seriously looking forward to another one. Your perspective, although similar to Alan, was along just a little different spot on the highway where I hadn't yet visited, and it gave me it really catapulted me into some more recovery. So it was so
Well,
good to
that's
see
good.
you.
Well,
Too.
that's a good. Thank you too, Howard. That's a good way to describe it because that's something that I have struggled a little bit with just describing to other people because Alan and I we know we have a lot in common in
Hmm.
terms of how we approach stuff, but when we get down to the actual work, we're what I would say from my experiences, we're actually very different in terms of but it's complementary. It's like we will we could sit with the same client and we will go for something. Each of us is a little different, but I think one of the things in working with both of us in these workshops, it shows is that there's never just one way.
Hmm. Right.
That there's so much available to us that if we just are paying attention and we track where people are going, we can really get into some good stuff. And I remember that piece of work you did, and I mean, I was thoroughly involved and thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And man, you were right there as present as anybody I've ever seen work. So I still think about that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, that's something. What's the
Hmm.
secret to this emotional sobriety? I said you got to be there.
That's it. But that's it. The secret, I'm
Yeah.
writing it down. The secret to emotional sobriety is you got to be there.
Yep. Presence is
All
what
right.
it's all about. My sobriety date is January 14th, 1989. And I got sober when I was 21 years old. So I just
Well,
recently celebrated 35 years continuous sobriety. I'm 56 years old. And, for that 35 years, one of my little kind of tags on that is, it's been the best 28 years of my life. Um, and it's a right, Tom?
I like it. I like it. I like it.
And it's kind of like I always say to people, it's like, and my disease isn't always that impressed with the 35 years either.
Mm.
Because what's happened in that,
Beautiful way to put it. No, the
yeah,
disease is not impressed.
right. And
Hell, that's good.
because the piece that I sometimes try to tell people is, because I got sober at such a young age, almost every, inconsiderate, selfish, amends type of behavior was all done sober. You know, I lost my job sober. I got
Mm-hmm.
married and then divorced and then married again sober. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The last week I talked about the bankruptcy, all sober.
Mm-hmm.
All of my behaviors, all of the, all that we talk about burning our own house down, that kind of thing, all done, with step work and sponsorship and meetings and all that stuff. Because I did not get to some of the stuff we talk about, here in our workshops for emotional sobriety or the podcast.
Wow.
Just I was, things were good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until things got painful, right? and didn't know why I couldn't get out of it. So, this emotional sobriety stuff is somewhat familiar to me, in the sense that in the 90s, when like John Bradshaw showed up, and Chopra and Oprah had all these people on, and your inner child and all that. So that is like what I see the roots that we look at today is kind of where they it started there and it sprouted, and then there was no connection to AA though in the sense of Bill Wilson's letter that Alan has connected to this work. So when I'll say about 5 years ago, Tommy Potash introduced me. He says, "Oh, here's a free CD. Here's a CD, Emotional Sobriety." It was Alan and Herb talking, and I was like, "Oh, where have I been with this stuff?" And I never heard this guy before. And so I started listening. I started reading. I started going to workshops, and got into. I was just talking to a guy who. I have a feeling I'm going to end up being his sponsor, but about the ground glass part of recovery. And what I mean by that is I was telling him a story where back in the 90s, my car got broken into and my stereo got taken, and, they messed it up a little bit, but, insurance paid to have everything restored. I got a new stereo. I got detailed car. Everything was back to new. And then about 6 months later, something fell on the passenger seat. It was like a bucket seat. So I took my hand and I reached in between, the high back and the bucket seat part to dig in there. And I pull my hand out and my fingertips are bleeding. Because they couldn't get rid of the ground glass. The little pieces that you don't see, you don't smell, you don't hear, any of that stuff. And it's like, but you reach down deep and you're going to get cut. It's there. And so that's what this emotional sobriety has done for me is I got to dig deep and cut my fingertips a little here. And so
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I've embraced it so much that it's somewhat exclusive what I talk about. Even when someone's like, let's talk about the big book, let's talk about the steps. So, all right, well, so let me show you where it fits in my recovery today. Because I just can't be one of those people where the only thing that changed is my breath, sober for 35 years.
Right.
Because if I'm telling my boss just go screw himself, and I'm still yelling at my wife and I kick the dog, well, I'm a winner because I got 35 years of sobriety. It's like, no, I'm not for me. I mean, other people, I'm not judging, but I need more than that. And so, the things that I'm looking at today is, I'm 56 years old, going on 57, and I'm kind of going through a new cycle in my life, right? That I'm going to stop working one day, and I have to plan for that. And as we ended this, isolation and lockdown, by our society not too long ago, I have to find new meetings and new people, and I got to make friends in my 50s again. And I'm like, how do I do that? How do I break into a group of guys who've been friends for 10 years and sober together? And I got to find new home groups. So there's a little bit of me kind of going through that. But at the same time, not alienating people because of this emotional sobriety, because it's very difficult to listen to if you're not ready for it. And a therapist told me, many years ago when we were working with this stuff, she said, Howard, the further along the path you walk with this stuff, sometimes the less hands there are to hold. And it's going to be hard sometimes to find someone to talk to about this stuff. So I am so
Howard?
glad. Yes.
So what weren't you doing for the first part of your sobriety and recovery? Like what was the ground glass that you kind of came up against when you reached down?
So the first thing is, when I think back to my first marriage, I had no skills to be a husband whatsoever. I thought that because I had 8, 9, 10 years of sobriety and working the steps, and I just had no clue on how to not get my way in a relationship. I pretended real well, but I sat with the with the silent scorn that they talk about in the 12 and 12. And I really was not a partner with my first wife. And it's fair to say she wasn't either. She had a dynamic of being a little girl, and I had a dynamic of being an overbearing parent, right? So, and we just cycled through that, and we got a little better, and then it got back to that. We got a little bit better, talked to our sponsors, and so I didn't have those skills. And then another part really with the, you keep getting fired in sobriety. I didn't get a chance to look at that until I was fired a fourth time. And the lady who worked at I was actually a scientist, a pharmaceutical company doing research, and she said, I'm going to bring you your stuff. Why don't we make an appointment? And we were friends, and she says, and we're going to have some lunch. I said, oh, okay, sure. So we had lunch, she said, I need to let you know, kind of off the record why you got fired. I said, oh, okay. And she said, you don't know how to talk to people at work. She said, your sarcasm and your humor are funny with me and you in my little office, but in public, it's not adorable. And especially because we worked with other cultures, she says, I don't think you understand, in other cultures, sarcasm's not a vegetable. They don't talk that way. Because you grew up with it, and I did too. But and it was I'll say people from China, people from India, people from Russia, people from other cultures where it just just wasn't in the workplace. It wasn't popular. It wasn't cute. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, also, you seem to want to tell the truth. She says, but when the group leader asks for, feedback on something should be probably said in private and not in public. I realize you're being honest, but you made him or her look foolish in front of everybody else. And you were right. The data was not good, but that was probably more of a private conversation than a public conversation. So, and so these two kind of new character defects I discovered brought into kind of what me and Tom worked on, is I had to go to every fight I was invited to and some that I wasn't. And I was going to win.
Wow. Wow.
I'm a smart guy, and you know what? And I'm going to win. And the expression, I am so glad that I heard Alan say, in some, either the podcast or something, instead of do you want to be happy or do you want to be right, he said, do you want to be right or do you want to be connected? And I was like, I'm alone because, because that type of behavior, while starts out fun, it sometimes, again, alienates people. They don't want to have a conversation with you because they know it's going to turn into a match, and my battle of wits is submitting, from like a UFC standpoint. And I even had a sponsor one time. He says, we were kind of going at it, and he says, "Can't you just let me win every now and then?" And
wow!
And I almost cried.
What I love. What I love about you though is that this is a desire for connection that's being thwarted. Like you are attempting to connect. You're just trying to. Now you need to change the medium.
Correct.
Oh, that's a really good point, Patrick. Yeah. Nothing wrong with the goal. It's the method, the technique. You need to, that's what your person having lunch with you is trying to tell you. It's like you got to do this in a different way. Yeah.
The edginess that kind of I'm popular for in some circles really had to be worked on. So the epiphany was on the emotional sobriety front is, so now I'm married a second time. And we're working on 14 years, and April 1st is our anniversary. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And it gets second marriage for both of us. So we've bumped our head against the wall, both of us, in different ways. And so now I'm not doing this again. Okay. I'm going to make this work in signs of, difficulty. And most, it's not that recent. It's a couple years ago. Her and I both were going through something medical. She had thyroid cancer, and that was, we knew about it. She was going to get surgery, and she's fine now. It was one of the most benign cancers to have in general. We found out, but the process and the emotional turmoil and really the spiritual disruption in your life, when you can't control your own body, is tremendous, right? So she gets the surgery back in it was May 4th, let's say 2022, and about a week after she's home recovering, and something happens in me physically. My iron levels, I go to the bathroom, it's 2 a.m, and I pass out cold one night, and I'm taken to the hospital, and come to find out I had a serious iron deficiency, almost that I could have died from, and
Wow.
and we had to figure out what was causing it, and so I'm in the hospital for a week, and what happened, what I like to describe is, in the past, one of us was, well enough to talk the other one out of their tree, whatever that tree is, the fear tree, the anger tree, I'm hungry and I shouldn't eat tree, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now we're both up in the fucking tree. Sorry. I'll say that again. So type Patrick. And now we're both up in the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I was so mean to her.
Yeah.
And when I wasn't mean to her, I was mean to everybody else.
Mm.
And
we're looking at how much it hurt you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, this is unacceptable. You don't get to talk to me like that after 33 years of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. And so we got some help. We got a personal workshop, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we unpacked some stuff. And one of the things that, I identified just some more hot buttons of, and one of them is that feeling of being taken advantage of. I did not realize at a core level how much I was going to avoid that. And so now, once that was unpacked and uncovered, so this is why I had to go to every fight I wasn't invited to.
It was a reflex.
I had
you
to.
just had, yeah.
I had to.
Yeah.
And so we have so here we are 2 years later, and the level of surrender I have about Howard being wrong is awesome. Has changed who I am, and so much so that we tease, and Cheryl, my wife, she says, because so the first instance I had to not. The term is pugilistic. It's not a compliment. So the first chance I had to not be pugilistic is we were on a trip to Mexico, and our room was messed up, and they were going to be charging us an extra $50 a day. Now I understand the trip was thousands of dollars, and $50 a day wasn't going to move the needle anywhere. But here it is; they're taking advantage of me, right? And she's watching me start to boil, and we're in Mexico. And I realize, you know what, and it's at a Marriott. And I say that because I just came up with the term, and I stopped, and I just said, okay, Está Bien, good, and okay. And,
Está bien.
Right?
How about it?
And my wife is like, she's on the side, she's tense, right? Because she knows, here he is, here he comes, I can see it, I can feel it. And I just put my arm around her, and she says, is this okay with you? I said, sweetheart, Marriott wins today. Marriott wins.
Beautiful.
And she's like, okay, and all through our trip, something would happen, and I said, the taco stand wins. Sorry, and I'm telling you, it is a great reset. So she.
It feels wonderful, right?
Oh my God!
It's like, I mean, Roger and I have talked about this a lot on Thursday night. It's just how much how it's hard to describe to somebody how wonderful it is to be wrong. It's just like, but every one of those times is an opportunity to experience ourselves at a whole different level when we've always because I not exactly like you, but yeah, I've got that part that just says you're not going to make me look. Mine's always you're not going to make me look stupid.
Nope.
So I have to outsmart everybody, and it's like. And guess what? I'm not always going to outsmart everybody because first of all, I'm not always smarter than everybody.
No, you're not.
And sometimes and it feels great to be able to say that and know when the Marriott wins.
Yeah. So during the trip, she says, I like New Howard. I started crying again
Oh, you're still crying.
because
I love it.
what had happened was, Patrick, just to tie this into the emotional sobriety, I realized I became, well, let me say this. For all the insecurities I've had of being unattractive to women, most of it was physical, right? I was too heavy, I was too whatever, too old. And when this showed up, it's like I was unattracted to my wife because of my personality. I had no idea with what I looked like, how much money I made, any of that. It was this, monster that would show up. Yep. And so, and this has been very pervasive and very, we've really had much nicer times, and I can't explain the how many times it feels, or how good it feels to now have this almost be a reflex rather than I got to think about I surrender. So another example is it was one morning I was at Starbucks, and it was early in the morning, and it's a Starbucks where there's a school nearby, like a private school nearby. And so you go in there, and if you didn't order your stuff early, like you were going to wait, even though you did like a mobile order, right? So I get in there, and I'm like, and it's like standing room only. And I see, one lady just like getting all worked up. Her order isn't ready, and I can see her, and I'm like, I'm watching Howard, right? And she asks to see the manager, and in a minute, because they're just so busy. Comes over, she says, I have to be at work, and it goes on and on. And this guy, I look at this guy, he looks at me, and we both kind of shrug, and he says to me, well, they've been at work for 2 hours, and you got to be aware. Like, they've been working. You think they care about you having to be at work? They don't care at all, And it's like, and for her, Starbucks was winning, but she couldn't admit it,
Right.
So this,
but that experience of watching yourself from the outside through that experience, I love that. Yeah,
it was like, that's what you look like to everybody else. I think I'm being some kind of hero, sticking up for myself. And it's like, yeah, but at what cost?
I never thought about it this way, Howard, but it's exactly analogous to how it was when I got sober. And then I was still, because, I'm not around many people who drink nowadays, but it's like in those days, I still was around people who were drinking. And to watch people be drunk once I was sober was ridiculous.
Yeah. What am I doing here?
Everything. Yeah. Well, why do you all talk so loud? Why do you stand close to me and breathe on me? Why do you repeat the same thing over and over again? And I realized, oh my God, that's what I was doing. And that's beautiful, because you're right with the emotional sobriety. It's the same thing. You're watching and you're seeing where you've come from.
Right. Well, and like I said, with being present, like I have to worry less about my coffee and more about who I am in this space. Right.
Right. One of the things I'm a fan of the philosophy of Stoicism, and one of the things that Marcus Aurelius talks about in his meditations very often is that his job is to every day is just to be the best possible version of himself he can be, and it's like. And I love your way of putting that. I need to worry less. But you have a real. I'm a fan of this. So you have a good nutshell way of putting things. It's like I wrote down before we started. The secret to emotional sobriety is you got to be there, is what you said. So I jotted that down. But the other thing is you got to worry less about your coffee.
Yeah,
it's like I love that.
Yeah.
I thought I'd ask you, Tom. You mentioned at one point on the show that somebody told you that you have such a wonderful sense of empathy that you cultivated, but that at one point in time you used it to hurt people or to be mean. Yeah. But I
Uh,
dare I say you've come a long way since then.
well, thank you.
And so, how did some of that like tendency fall away, or like what was some of the
Well,
work you did?
well, first of all, it reminds me of the original story that I have a friend. I'm still in touch with her these days, and we're old people, but love to stay in touch. But I remember when we were probably 19 years old, sitting in a car in some parking lot somewhere, and her name was Maggie, and she said, Tom, you're one of the most perceptive people I've ever met. And I remember I can feel my chest just even puff up right now as I tell that story. How about me? Da da da. And and it stopped there for me because I heard the words, I didn't listen, I didn't take it in. What she said next, which I think is incredible wisdom for a 19-year-old young woman, is she said, and you use it to hurt people. It's like at that time, I can honestly say I didn't care. I
Mm.
was just glad I was so perceptive. And I don't know the answer to the question you're asking about other than, and I don't think I really got anywhere close to that until my first marriage didn't survive me. And I was still drinking after that, the people I was with, friends, and especially people I dated after that, when I look back, I mean, talk about making amends, I was mean and cruel to people, and stuff like that. So I don't know exactly. What you've done is you've inspired me to think about that process and how that fits into my history because I think Howard and I both have wives we're lucky to have because they don't put up with shit. Is that fair to say, Howard? It's like
Yeah.
there are a few things that I'm not sure I would, maybe I would have. There are a few things in my life and about changes in me that I'm not sure I would have ever gotten to if it wasn't for Dee Dee
No.
just
Yeah.
having a hard line. It's like, nope,
Yeah, we're not doing
that
that.
ain't it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you look in their eyes and they're not fucking around. They're telling you the truth. And so
Hmm.
you go, it becomes a choice. Do I want this? Do I want this relationship, or do I want to be right, smart, whatever else, all that other stuff? And it's like, and obviously with our wives today, we've made the right decision so far.
Yeah.
You
But
know what that means, though? That means that you really know when you've done good. When you get that compliment, it probably feels like nothing
yeah,
else.
it's a wonderful thing because it's so. Yeah, you could take that compliment and we could take it back in time and share it with people that I knew when I was in my drinking days and say this is a description of Tom Rutledge and they would just go, no, it's not. It's
Yeah.
like it's not nowhere near. It's like it's yeah, it's amazing how God, it's amazing how much we change, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. And the thing that was said to me, Tom, similar to you, is you know, Howard, I really do like you, but you make it so hard to be around you.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And that was said to me just before I did start some of the codependency work. And he says, I think you need to take a look at why you make it so hard to be around you. So I'd like to just kind of tip off something, or not tip, but like put a little like icing on the cake of this new Howard thing. Because yesterday,
Okay. Yeah.
my wife and I, we went to, we live near Princeton, New Jersey. And so we went there I need new eyeglasses, and we went to the Warby Parker place or whatever, which is a fascinating little like setup. And so we went there and we were getting hungry, and then which was about turning to hangry for both of us. And while I was doing the glasses, she looked for a place to eat. And again, I used to be very picky about where I ate, and if you were to look at me, you would say he's not a picky eater. But I wasn't a picky eater. I just had ideas that were very, I think, more helpful than hers. That's all, not silly. So she picked a place, and we were waiting at the door, and the guy greeted us and said, two people, and we're waiting, and two people come out, and we're waiting, and she's like, are you okay? I said, yeah. I said, I think New Howard's doing okay right now, And she's a little fresh. She's like, so what would old Howard do right now? She wants me to engage, right? And I said, I don't remember. Like, oh, bullshit. Of course I remember, but I was like, yeah, I don't remember what old Howard. Yeah. And she's like, well, let's find somewhere else. I said, yep, let's find somewhere else. The Pancake House won. We went somewhere else, and we went to this Mediterranean place, which was fantastic. Tom, if you ever come back here, I have to take you there. It's a Turkish place. Patrick, you as well. It turned out to be a really happy accident, and we joked about the way just the analysis and being aware of it. And when she said, "What would old Howard do?" I was like, "Oh, got it. You want me to ask for the manager, right?" And it didn't ask for the manager. It's nice.
Well, and I love that because this is one of those things where it's depending on our individual history. So somebody who's not you, and who's not got them not so hard to be around in their history, that kind of stuff. It might even be a really appropriate challenge for them to ask to see the manager. It might be like he goes to reports that to his therapy group and says, "Well, good for you, man, for doing that." For you, it's like it's picking up a drink, and you're going like. It's like it's not. In other words, it's fine to ask for the manager, but I don't know if you think of it this way, but I think there are certain behaviors that are like picking up the first drink, and I use the AA thing of think the drink through. Okay, that's fine. I could do that, but what's likely to happen next? And I think it sounds like you did that, chose that, and I also love the idea that you can also encode in your history now. This other concept of happy accidents. It's like, it's about being in the moment. We never know that this may be the better thing to happen. Nope. So let's go with it.
Yeah.
And New Howard can do that. New Howard can go like, oh, let's see what happens.
Right. It's like,
rather than let's make it happen the way I want it to.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't know you could do that with zucchini. Huh, look at that.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Howard,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I ask, so what's like the frontier of emotional sobriety for you right now? Like, what's the thing that the next thing that you feel like you really need to kind of get your hands in and start working on?
The growing edge, as a teacher of mine used to say. What's your growing edge? Yeah.
So I'm kind of looking in the distance here. How to put this in succinctly. In the job I have now. I changed careers. I went from being a chemist because I talked last week about how I was able to change professions once I got out of debt and go be a school teacher. So in 2009, I started teaching a private high school, religious school, Jewish school, and it's started teaching chemistry and physics, and it's the last job I've had. It's the longest job I've ever had. And I remember in the first year, my wife was saying, this must be a good fit for you. I said, well, how do you know that? She says, because you haven't taken a sick day all year. And I was like, huh. My other job, I took them all the time, and I wasn't sick.
Yeah.
So,
maybe kind of.
Yeah, right. A little. But no, the point is, I wanted to be there. And so over the years, I had to work on my emotional sobriety there as well, from the standpoint of working with teenagers. In my other profession, I hadn't been doing that, and
that's like PhD level work. I mean, in emotional sobriety, working with teenagers, man.
Well, here's the deal, Tom. I'm actually. I'm only working with teenagers. Now, some of them are actually 16 years old, and some of them are 37 or 54 or 63.
I got you.
Yeah. So, in a way, we're always working with teenagers.
You're right. That's a really good point.
Over the years, as I've inserted myself more into the school and part of the culture, this past year, I got a promotion into administration. So now I'm teaching a few classes, and I'm administration, and I'm in charge of student conduct. So and I don't have a degree in administration, but I have experience at the school. So they felt that was more powerful, or held more weight, I guess, to the profession or what they wanted. And I was also familiar with the school and everything, so they could have gone outside. My feelings wouldn't have been hurt. I would understand that there's certain optics that some people need to see letters after someone's name. It's okay, but in this case, it was a good fit, and I've been learning. It's like almost a reset in learning how to, be a part of a culture, and also represent, I'll say, a group conscience, to borrow AA term, because, the administration, we have a meeting on something, and the principal puts something forth, and it doesn't matter whether you agree with it, it's going to happen. So you can act like you like it, and nobody else on who's not administration won't know that you don't like it, or you can act like you don't, and then they'll see the division in the team. So so that's not the challenging part, is acting, is being part of a group conscience. Because actually I explained it to the principal when I first got the job. Why he says, you seem pretty agreeable. I said, well, here's why. I just told him where I come from with the recovery and everything. So the part that I'm now working on is, when I was a teacher, I might get 10 emails a day, and none of them were from parents. They're usually from, hey, we have this next week, or don't forget about this, or we need help with this program. Okay. I now have 127 emails in a day, and the same amount of time I had when I was a teacher.
Right.
So my sense of either not doing enough, not accomplishing things, all that has come back. And so I'm having to treat that every day. Every day. There isn't a day where I sit down and say, oh, yeah, look at you. You have too much time on your hands. No. So I've had to, from time to time, open myself up to people on the administration team. And the beauty of that is, once again, as my sponsor says, Howard, you're the only one who doesn't think you're doing a good job.
Wow. That's got to feel so good.
Right. And I'm just like, oh. I mean, I was really expecting, we really did nothing. Not one of them has said anything like the horseshit I tell myself in my head.
Right.
So the challenge for me today, Patrick, is to pay attention, pay very close attention to that. And
to let the messages from outside have the credibility, instead of that message in your head.
Correct.
That you and I both have, that is the three of us have, is this completely predictable. It's always going to come down to, by the way, you're a piece of shit, and you're not doing enough. It's like, okay, that voice stays with us, just as far as I know, just like my little tequila boy alcoholic voice stays in there. But the truth is, it's our job not to give them any credibility. And what your feedback tells you is, listen to the people that you respect, who are giving you information. Sometimes they're giving you information by not giving you information. They're not complaining. They're not asking for something more.
Nope.
They're satisfied. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, just on Friday, sat down with a colleague. He's a vice principal. And I said, all right. He said, how are you doing? I said, not good. He said, oh, let's go in my office. And I just told him how overwhelmed I was. And he's seen some of my emails I've had to put out. And he says, yeah, I could see you being overwhelmed. And he says, you just got to be careful not to get burnt out. He says, and I said, oh, you can see me getting burnt out? He says, yeah. And he says, and we all have like little triggers. I can see people when they're burnt out. He mentions one guy, he gets like this, another guy gets, I said, and I asked him a question I probably didn't. I said, okay, what's my trigger? What do you see? What he says? He says, are you sure? I said, yeah. Just
what's my tell? You want to know?
I said, yeah, just hurt my feelings. That's all. Come on, let's go. And he says, you get snippy. Your sarcasm comes out. You get real edgy.
Wow.
and I just smiled. He says, I'm sorry. I said, no. I said, that's awesome. That's awesome. I said, so I even said to him, I said, you know what, today, there won't be any edge. You'll see. Thank you. I needed that. And I just decided something just didn't need to be said that day. You know what? They're going to get in trouble again. I'll tell the kid again, but it's like, I have a feeling he's right, and I'm just going to be edgy to a kid. And let me tell you something, guys. The most, no, Tom swears. The most fucked up amends I've had to make over the past few years is to a teenager when I stepped out of line as a professional. And then they say, well, you're the adult. I said, whoa, like, you're the adult. You don't have to apologize. Well, what? I said, well, I'm sorry that's the way you think, but I actually do have to apologize. I said, I acted very unprofessional. And I've had to do that a handful of times. It's no fun. But everybody feels better. That's the good news, because they realize, oh God, he knows he's wrong, and he's willing to fix it. And so, but to get to that point, that's what I'm working on today, is like, so Tom, you got your should monster and your tequila boy. So I got Mr. Doubt.
Yeah.
You know, and Mr. Doubt is relentless. He is not, he's never taken a nap, right?
Oh, they don't sleep at all.
Well, I don't want to let it go unobserved. It is such a transformational moment to receive an amends from somebody. And I received one when I was a teenager from the first friend I ever knew to get sober. And I can just imagine that the teenager you made that amends to, and you kind of doubled down and you insisted that no, regardless of our age difference, I have something that I need to account for. And that just inevitably, that's going to be something that, if it's a he, that he will remember, for quite some time.
Well, the question I often ask, even, apologizing to people, is like, what do you gain by not apologizing?
It's interesting when you said that question. I just took it without content there and just put it in my head, and whatever the response was going to be in my old way of being, that I still have the potential to do, but the response to that would always be, truthfully, I am going to avoid whatever. Because what I was going to do by not doing it is I'm going to avoid something.
Yep.
I'm not going towards something. I'm not going to accomplish anything. I'm just going to sidestep and get the hell out of here. And that's, the chicken shit way of doing it.
Yeah. One of the things that I started to see was very helpful in, I'll say, later sobriety, it's not early sobriety, is like all these little tells that we have, all these little things. And the most recent job I lost, years ago, I went to work at the grocery store, and as part-time, I was unemployed, and of course my thing was, I was making $80,000 a year, and I had to take a pay cut working at the grocery store. And someone said, well, if you were unemployed, it sounds like you got a raise. So he went, like, what were you making before? Oh, zero? Well, no, I mean, I was making 80. No. Last week you were making zero. So you got a raise. So sit down and shut up.
That person was helping with your humility right there.
Right. And so then the other thing he says, hey, and I had like 20 years of sobriety at this point, right? Still losing my job and all that. And he says, hey, let me ask you, what if, next time you get fired from a job, you have to go into the room and start over your sobriety? Like, let's say that's your new bottom line. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. He says, yeah, but what if it isn't? I bet you're going to keep every job now, aren't you? And do what it takes, aren't you? So, if like I sponsored a guy and he would get into like these yelling matches with his kids, or I said, I tell you what, like 11 years. Next time you yell at your kids, you got to go in and say, I start your day count over. Well, that's what do you mean? What? Well, just think about it. See, look how upset you got when you have to start your day count. Oh, what if we redefine your sobriety there instead of, with tequila?
I love that.
Yeah.
We offer many things, but one of the things from a certainly cognitive point of view, we just offer people different ways of looking at things. And part of our humility is to be open to listen to that. So, so I can be hell bent on something, and Howard or Patrick, either one of you can say, hey, come over here and look at it from this angle.
Yeah.
And in the old days, I wouldn't have done that. But nowadays, I'll go over and look at it from the angle, and like we talked about earlier, Howard, it feels so good that I will go like, oh wow, I never even thought about it this way, and it gives me a change of perspective. It's going to go with me from here on.
Yeah.
Hey, Alan. How you doing?
I've had a rough couple days here.
Yeah, you've been hurting. I've been thinking about you, man.
My leg is probably twice the size that it's supposed to be right now, which is not good. So tiring, man. But good news is today I got more sleep than I've gotten.
We're good.
That's good.
I'm a big fan of being unconscious whenever you can in situations like that. So,
Well, tell me what you guys been doing. Did you go back into the grapevine or you're just doing
no, we've been picking on Howard.
Yep. Your favorite subject, Alan. Picking on Howard.
don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. It's too good.
I mean, Alan was in so much pain. He didn't have time to find a black shirt. He wore a shirt with color in it. Look at that.
What's that?
Have you ever seen me in a shirt with color on it?
I've only seen you in a black T-shirt and a sport coat.
It might not be me then.
Oh, interesting.
It's true.
Not be me. Somebody may have come in and taken my Zoom link and shown up as
Right.
I was going to mention Tom's refrain about it's easy to have a good day on a good day.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about how emotional sobriety shows up for us on our bad days. But I thought I would put a question to Howard, and maybe we could all kind of chime in about like, how do you see emotional sobriety really coming in for you when, your ego's big and things are going well? And, is there a way that like you kind of help to keep your center of gravity during those moments where you get a little bit, things run away a little bit in that regard?
Well, the other day when I was celebrating the anniversary meeting, and I was talking about emotional sobriety, and one of the ways because my new bottom line, like I was just telling with Tom, is everything is, I know that this last year of sobriety was, emotionally balanced because I think I only asked to see the manager once this year.
Nice.
And I as the Tom, I shared a few other nutshells and everything, and so people came up to me afterwards and really I'm gonna remember this, I remember that, and all that. And so when that happens, that's when I start to get a little like, oh, I got this, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is, and in the moment, I'm gonna give it to me. Like, yeah, it was a Saturday morning. I haven't fought with anybody, I haven't asked for a manager. My wife and I are and it is a great morning, and that too shall pass.
Credit,
right?
I just call it credit where credit is due.
Right.
It's not, you're not overstepping it. You're just being, you're part of being realistic, which is what we're always talking about. This is about being realistic. Is sometimes I'm doing great, and sometimes I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing, and it's okay for me to acknowledge that.
Exactly. And so, but I know, look, I've been sober long enough to say this too will pass. Okay. So what are you going to do when it passes, right? What are you going to do when your wife disagrees with something, some wonderful suggestion you came up with, and there's no reason for her to say no. And so I honestly, guys, I probably don't go to as many meetings as I used to when I first got sober, but there's pretty much not a moment in a car where I don't really listen to music anymore. I'm either listening to Emotional Sobriety podcasts, or I'm listening to one of my other guys. His name is Dr. John Deloney. He's got a great podcast. I like Dr. Laura. I like, anytime I can listen to something about self-improvement. I'm reading a book right now. I'm actually listening to an audiobook called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that before. But I surround myself with things that keep me grounded. And it really is because I know my ability to just lift myself off the ground and just look down on all of you. I don't care if you've been sober 52 years, Alan. Let me tell you, like let me show you the one spot where I think you need help, and I can get there. It'll take minutes, not weeks, not months. It'll take minutes.
Howard, you mean there's just one?
He's not as sharp in that direction as he used to be.
Anyway, so Patrick, that's really, the reality. I have to surround myself with ways to think about myself better, ways to think about other people better, because that's the other thing is, this whole don't take it personally. That was one of the two favorite lines out of the 12 essential book is, it's not personal and nobody's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Just when I first started getting this, that was the two things I needed to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I've grown, the acceptance one, again, I don't have to be right all the time, has also been there. But, this whole personal thing, but, that's the taking advantage,
Mm-hmm.
same idea, right? That other people, they don't wear little signs that say, yeah, my dog is in the hospital today.
Mm-hmm.
Or, or my friend just had, surgery and he's not feeling well and I have to go help him. Or
Mm-hmm.
and so why don't I make up a story that says that's what they're dealing with today instead of Howard's in their way?
Beautiful. If I'm going to assume something, why don't I assume something like that?
Yeah.
And yeah, because we're all so great at assuming, but we, that selfish assumption versus benevolent assumption, like probably something that person's having a tough time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it too, though, Howard. It's like, you're describing how and I guess because of the question that's being put to you, so I understand the context of it, but you're describing how you're protecting yourself from that ego. But, the other side I see in you, which and I see that part, and I respect that, by the way. I respect how you've really embraced your humility, right? And see that as something that you have to actively engage in, right? Actively promote, so to speak, in your life on a daily basis, which I think is really look, it's important, I think, for all of us. But the other side I see in you is there's a part of you that is so committed to your growth and development. And it's not just about, you know what I mean, protecting you from becoming this egomaniac that you can be, or this arrogant guy that's going to go through life like a bull in a china shop. I mean, yeah, you've done that and you've suffered that, and that's caused a lot of pain in your life. I know that. But I see this other side of you that I think is so wonderful, man. It's just this part of you that's so, you're like, a child with curiosity about
Mm-hmm.
what you're discovering. And see, and a lot of the stuff I think is also driven by that side of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That makes sense. I mean, I see that, I love that in you. Look, it's one of the things I love hanging out with you is that I love how the awe you bring about like emotional sobriety and recovery and just being, showing up in this world in the best way you can show up.
Thank you.
That's a good thing, and that's a good takeaway for anybody listening too, because this takes us back to the thing that we talk about. We've talked about this on the podcast before. There's two forms of recovery from and recovery of. When we first start, so when we started, we were talking about Howard's beginning in emotional sobriety. We're talking about what we're recovering from. I was recovering from losing my, I was running from losing my job. I was running my relationship, from getting the DUI, all those things. And then there's a shift. And now all of a sudden I'm pursuing. It's not I'm running from, I'm pursuing. And that's what Alan's talking about with you. The cool thing about it is if we go back and say, are you still recovering from those things? Yes. Yeah. Today, I'm not going to get a DUI. Today, my wife is not going to leave me. Now, that's not front of my mind, but it still works. But the focus is like what Alan's saying about you, Howard. I think it's a great description. Is basically it's what can I discover?
Yeah.
What can I discover today? And it's like, and while I'm babbling here, I just want to say in response to Patrick, your question is when we're doing well, because Howard kind of inspired me to get my answer to that, which is it's good for me to remember to stay in touch with you guys. It's good for me to stay in touch with my support even when I'm doing well, because I have a history of drifting off. I'm okay. I don't need that, and I use support when I'm in trouble. I need support. It's like, no, I need to be in touch with my support people on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And I need to have that. And just the perspective, because we're never all doing great.
No.
And it really helps, it helps to know, it's like, I'm sorry that Alan's dealing with his pain. It's but talk about a selfish program. I use that. I go like I'm wishing the best for him. I pray for him, and I'm grateful that, when I'm looking at my life, I'm grateful that I'm not in pain today. It makes it. I had a sponsor who used to say, wake up every day and think of problems you don't have. And he said, it's okay. Think of problems your friends have that you don't have. Because that was really difficult for me. But it's really important if we keep perspective by being in these conversations.
You showing up when you did, it's got big. You're only late for your first meeting energy. Yeah, it's great to see you. Great to see your beautiful face. But anyway, go right ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, there's this great poem by Blake that goes something like this, and I'm not just paraphrasing this, but I think it'll be close. So as you walk into the center court in Wimbledon, the poem goes something like, you know you've arrived when you meet success and failure, and you treat those imposters as the same.
Yes.
You know you've arrived when you meet success and failure, and you treat both of those imposters as the same. So see, I think one of the things that happens in emotional sobriety, and I think that this is an important point to make here, is when we talk about balance, what we mean is that we don't treat a great day as an imposter, that this is what life is about, as Thom was saying.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the experience. It's not the entire experience. The gestalt, the whole experience, is what we do when we take a great day and a bad day and how we put those together in our life and treat them the same. That this is just an experience I am having now. And I can embrace that experience for what it is right now and not judge it as good or bad. It's just what I'm experiencing now. And to find value in both, because there is, as much as I hate it, as much as I, want to say I just want good days, and I used to want that a lot more than I do now. I think I've started to grow up a little bit after 52 years in recovery. Howard may have a different opinion about this in a minute here, but I've got. He's laughing. You guys, I took it. I preempted the shot he was going to make. See, I've learned to do that with how it's like. See, I'm getting good at boxing. I'm learning how to duck that left hook that's coming. But seriously, I think I'm a little better at it today. Is trying to just embrace what is as what is, and I think that's the balance that Bill was talking about. Is that it's not about being happy. It's not about being sad. It's about being alive. And
Well,
being
Alan,
alive,
what you're doing is you're talking about we actually, over time through this process, we change our definition of a good day. It's like a good day is not just a day where I'm happy, 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 and everything's going my way. It's like a good day is when we're learning shit. A good day is when we feel a connection. I'm having a good day right now because I feel connected to the three of you guys. It's
yeah, a
like,
good day is I can sleep and then wake up and come into the middle of the podcast and not
yeah.
judge myself that I didn't get here at the beginning and enjoy you guys and show up for you guys. And I was eager. I couldn't wait to say hi to you guys and see you guys today. I'm
Yep.
feeling lonely right now, and it's great to be connected to you guys. So, see, I think that that's what we're striving for here with this emotional sobriety. How can we bring a perspective to life that is going to allow us to experience whatever we're going to experience and to be able to embrace it for what it is and value whatever it brings? See, that's where I get to I'm okay even if. See if I can somehow start to integrate that. Now, look, it sounds wonderful. I wish I could pull that off all the time. I hope you guys know that I don't. I mean, I get close to it at times. There's even moments when I think I experience that. But it is what do we say? We strive for progress
Yeah.
along this, not perfection.
Yeah, I think also the language I use has changed, right? So what I mean by that is my day no longer has like an emotion attached to the entire day, right? So
Right.
I had a pretty good, I had about 9,000 good moments today, and one really shitty one, and so I'm going to deal with
Or in the past, we would have a day by 10 a.m. We've had a rough time for a second, and we labeled the day.
Yep.
And it becomes an affirmation. Bad day. I'm having a bad day. It's like you don't, and you take yourself out of the game.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
exactly right.
What I've tried to, people, when people at work say, how's your day? Like they're just being polite, but there's some people I could say, well, I didn't get quite done everything I wanted to, but I'm okay with that. In other words, I admit the deficiency to myself. I'll say it out loud, and then I say out loud, I'm okay with it. There are some things that just didn't get done today, right? And I think that's where I play a little game with myself that I was going to get all this done today. No, nobody thought I was. So why not admit that? And how many people did I help today? I mean, if I measured it by that, it's like every day is great, quite honestly, unless it's zero. If it's zero, then I got to work on that. But I really sometimes say, I helped a bunch of people today, and I pissed one off probably, but okay.
Par for the course.
Yeah.
And this has been a recurring theme these last few episodes.